akan membahas tentang social worker dari narasumber kita, yaitu Jamie Nunez, yang beliau sudah 20 tahun lebih begitu berkarya di bidang ini. Jadi teman-teman diharapkan ya bisa mendapatkan insight dari pengalaman beliau yang sudah membuat banyak sekali proyek yang berdampak pada lingkungannya. Jadi beberapa di antaranya bersama dengan Boys and Girls Community. Di sana adalah sebuah Boys and Girls Club, saya koreksi ya, itu adalah sebuah academic center di mana dia membuat sebuah kesempatan belajar, memberikan kesempatan belajar bagi remaja dan siswa yang berasal dari keluarga menengah ke bawah di Amerika untuk mendapatkan kesempatan pendidikan yang sama dengan student dari social economy background yang lebih tinggi, seperti itu. Nah, oke, saya without further ado, mungkin ya, let's give a warm welcome to our speakers today, Jamie Nunez. Hello, Jamie.
Hi everyone.
How are you doing, Jamie?
Doing well.
Good.
This is,
Should I say congratulations for the new elections in your country?
Finally, something exciting. So we're very much excited. And I'm terribly sorry my Indonesian is horrible, but Assalamualaikum todos, and thank you for my presence here, everyone. Thank you for your presence.
All right, good. Jamie, maybe before you start your presentation, perhaps maybe you could describing again gitu ya, your work and what you do with the Commonsense in the USA.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Everyone, thank you. Happy Saturday, happy Friday to you. I'm going to give you a big hug and say, pleasure to see you. It's been a very long time since I've been to Indonesia, and I love it every time. It makes me smile. I wish I could live there. I am the regional director for an organization called Commonsense Media, and what I do is I help schools across the United States support their kids in doing work online. So anything from how online learning looks to training teachers to help better connect with their kids and their families. And I support ministries of education or centers around the United States to help them with that transition. So for example, if kids are having a really hard time learning online, then we would then help them to create support for them online. So a lot of what I do is training teachers, helping to set policies, and then helping to support parents and students to be the best that they can. So I smile and make things alive. So that's what I do for my day to day.
Oh, wow. So you've been doing a lot of work then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jamie, you know, in Indonesia, becoming a social worker is often viewed as a less less salary, or the salary is small, but the job description is huge, long hours. Okay, could you tell us probably perhaps like what is it like of being a social worker in the United States actually?
It's in many ways, it's when you get into social work, it's very similar to what I hear is happening maybe in Indonesia. A lot of when we get into social work, it's about the need to help people. While there might be some more resources, oftentimes people need some support to figure out how those resources or how that support works for them. So it's not as long hours. Well, actually, I should say it's long hours, but it drains the heart sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it's a very, very fulfilling industry and fulfilling profession. Not mm-hmm. only do you help, but do you feel good about yourself? And the smile makes me feel good. It's such an amazing experience. And a lot of what happens as social work here in the United States is about identifying when something is not going right. In my case, identifying when students aren't doing well or when families are struggling. So you are always solving mysteries, solving challenges. So.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow. It's a lot of creativity there, and it's very rewarding for yourself. Right. Would you like to show us like a few of your previous project or current project, perhaps? Please feel free to do so.
Yeah, of course. Okay, everyone that you're out there, thank you for joining. You all 30 plus hundreds, however many are you out there. You have to show me on the chat how to say some words in Indonesian, so I can be a part of your process. I'm going to share my screen if you're okay. And we will start. And I want to share with you the impact that you can have with students. And I'm going to give you through this journey of what it's been like for me as a social worker. Sometimes it's been very hard. I've been doing this work for close to 20 years, but it is so fulfilling. And I'm going to give you kind of what that looks like for me. I want you to think about what your impact is every single day, right? You can get into business, you can get into medicine, you can get into some other fields that might pay more, but the impact that you have on your society is so profound when you can actually get into social work. And I want to let you to think about how you can do it starting today in social media and the way you engage. So I want to say hello. Nice to see you. I tried to say some nice words in Indonesian, but I'm horrible at it. So Assalamualaikum, thank you very much for your presence. That is me. This is when I was 9 years old and I didn't know what to do. I grew up in a very poor family here in the United States, and I didn't know what I wanted from my life. And when I went into the university, one of the first things that I asked myself was, how can I get my adventure self into what I do for a living? For some of you that don't know, I love doing surfing, anything related to the ocean. This is why, if you're from Sumatra, I absolutely love the ocean, or Jakarta, or Bali, or something like that. Beautiful ocean. But I wanted to be an adventurer, someone that always traveled and enjoyed the adventure. I also am very crazy. If you notice, this is me jumping off a nice big waterfall. So a lot of, when I think about social work, it has to be very adventurous for me. And this is, for those of you that have an adventure side or want to give back, this is a wonderful way to do that. The other part of me is I like to sketch a lot, meaning everything in my head is in pictures. So for me, when I look at you, Kaya, for example, I don't see you as a face, I see you as a picture. And so part of social work is identifying a vision that you might have in your life, something that you're thinking about. Maybe it's a family that's struggling with food, or maybe you want to help in the medical field because of what's happening with the pandemic. But you have to have a vision for what you want and an adventurous spirit in that. And I'm going to give you things of how it's helped me out. So for me, this news was very, very important for me when I first became a teacher. I realized that many of my students were always on their phone. And what I wanted to find out was how to best help students when they had problems on their phone. And Facebook in 2006 made it easy for everybody to post something. Now that's on Instagram or TikTok or some other platforms that you guys maybe use. But the important thing here for me is realizing where to find the right places to help people. And for all of you joining us today, the number one place that you can start today, right after this message, is to pick up your phone and send something very nice to someone. So I'm going to ask you to stop. I'm going to ask you to pick up your phone. If you don't have a phone, I want to ask you to write it down. And I'm going to ask you to write a nice note for someone that you have not seen in a long time, maybe a friend. I want you to write something very nice and I want you to send it to them. And if you don't have your phone, I want you to write it and then I want you to send it to them the next time you see them. Because part of social work is the ability to be able to constantly see the goodness where there's challenges, where there's negativity. And part of, I think, what's helped me as a leader, as someone that does social work, is to always see in social media where I can find positivity. So I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like. This is a former student of mine, a student that was very much never wanted to be in school. She had a really hard time sleeping. She had a really hard life. And as a school teacher, when I was a school teacher, it was very difficult for me to get her to go to school. And one of the things that we did at the time, again, this isn't Facebook, this is very many years ago, but one of the things that we did is I engaged with her, I connected with her on Facebook, and I said, listen, Tamara, you and I are going to be friends on Facebook, and every time you're in my class, I'm going to be helping you out on Facebook. And what we decided to do at that time is to have an engagement, and it got me excited about social work, because it wasn't just about Facebook, it was about this student being able to feel successful. So another very interesting example in which how you can use your power of social media, in my case, to help someone out. The last conversation I'm going to give you is the power of connecting with someone. And one of the things that we do, and this is particularly when I was working internationally, one of the things that we do is to always identify where you could be a help. So if you're very good at math, for example, think about how social work can help to support the businesses that the organizational structures of balancing and media around that. Another example could be just picking one person in your life today that you want to continue to help out by showing your best skills. So Kaya is very, very good at speaking Indonesian. I can already tell she's amazing. But one of the other things that she's very good at is she's very good at communicating. So I would say to you, Kaya, can you do me a favor? Practice your communication skills with someone else in your life, and then use that in your skill set. So as I said, social work is very big, but it's very easy to do when you can create that. And some of you might say, but it doesn't make any money and it's so difficult. But what I tell with you, what I'll share with you is that when you do something good, you will be recognized. And what I say is, what is your social sense? Meaning when your heart is filled with goodness, then people will see that and businesses will follow. And I'm going to give you a quick example of what that looks like. So now being a social work and supporting teachers, I am called to present to many ministries of education in different parts of the world. And each time I present that, they want to give me money for the work that I've done. And sometimes I'll say, that's beautiful, I'll take your money. And other times I won't. But what's important in all this is that because I've developed a sense of who I am, it's easier for me to get paid because I can communicate with others, businesses, others, the benefit of that. One last point, which is companies now have something called corporate social responsibility in the United States and worldwide. And what that means is when you join a company, you are obligated, there's more pressure on you to want to do good in your society. And if you get into social work and you're not sure, maybe you want to get into business, this is a wonderful field that you can get into that helps to support you financially, but also does very well. Okay, I'm going to close this by asking you to find your voice. I don't know where it's at, but we're going to ask you for this, okay? Here's the number one thing I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you, if you're close to your camera, get a little close to your camera, point to your mouth, and then you're going to say, I have a very powerful voice. Okay, Kaya, I'm going to ask you to do that because you're the only person that I see. 3, 2, 1. I have a very powerful voice.
Powerful voice.
So once you're the best. So once you find your voice, meaning when you find your identity, then I want you to spread it out, because that's all about social work. That's the type of impact that you can actually have. Does that make sense, everyone? All right. So the last thing before I let you go is go back into your social media, if you have an account on social media or your phone, and in your account today, tell others what ways you want to help others. And when you can answer this question for yourself, if you're at the university or you're young or you're old, when you can really demonstrate that, then you're on a really good pathway for social work. And I can get into specifics, but that is the gist of what we have. So to that. I can name a few things that I've done. We've helped to create a center supporting kids with no, foster kids, kids with no parents, help them to give them an education through the social work that I've done. We've helped over almost close to about 50,000 teachers right now, help them to identify those kids that needed help with their homework, help families to get the education that they need. This is the type of work that you can do in social work in the United States, and particularly abroad. So to that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take some questions, but know you can do it. Don't forget to say something nice about someone or write it down, and just be alive. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jamie, for such a heartwarming and it's very motivating presentations that you already show to us. Oke, beberapa teman-teman tadi ya, ada beberapa pesan yang disampaikan oleh Jamie, yaitu untuk bagaimana sih untuk menemukan keyakinan gitu, apakah memang berkarir di bidang social worker ini adalah sebuah panggilan kita atau itu untuk kita tuh bagaimana mengetahuinya. Itu bisa dilakukan dengan beberapa cara. Yang pertama bisa dengan find your own voice atau mengenali sebenarnya apa sih isu yang kamu pedulikan selama ini. Kemudian kedua, kamu bisa melakukan mini riset ke sosial media untuk melihat hal-hal apa yang bisa kamu perbaiki begitu. Jamie juga menekankan untuk bahwa social worker ini is all about helping other people, is about doing something bigger than just about collecting money, because he believe that uang itu akan mengikuti kerja keras yang sudah dilakukan kemudian seperti itu. Oke, Jamie, kita sudah dapat satu pertanyaan. We already got one question from Herlia here. Hello Jamie, my name is Herlia from Semarang. Gitu ya, dia punya ini juga ya, dia juga punya saudara yang graduated dari social worker, social welfare major begitu. Oke, dia punya pertanyaan nih, is your educational background relate to your achievement today in social work? And the second one is, when you visit Indonesia, did you find kind of potential that can be developed for social worker, Indonesian social worker?
First of all, Semarang's a beautiful, big city in Indonesia. So thank you very much for living there. It's a beautiful area. Wonderful question. Great question. The first part of that question is my background. When I went to the university, I studied international relations. And my aim was to help with developing countries to support them. And what I noticed when I got that degree was that social work was part of that process. And then I worked for the United States government for a few years to do a social work program. We call it here the Peace Corps, the United States Peace Corps. And that got me into social work at a government level. It paid okay. It's part of it is volunteer. And then you can get into development agencies, international development agencies. So that's my background. But it all relates because that's the interest that I had. When I visited Indonesia, the three opportunities that I saw, and again, I was in three very much interesting areas. I was in Jakarta. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. I'm horrible at that. I was in Lombok, and we went to, I was in another city. I'm terribly sorry. But what I noticed is a few things that I think there's potential for. Number one is social corporate work. So anytime you approach a business, asking them specifically what impact they're having in the community or in society, there's a huge need for that to provide that service, local or not. Second is to work directly with an NGO or non-government organization that is in Indonesia to provide that potential support. Or third could be through the services that are rendered, like health services, for example, the hospitals, the education services. So there's direct interest and impact potential in Indonesia to continue and to develop that, highly to do that as a potential. Great question.
Okay, I think your question is related with the next questions from Jensen Alfredo Silaban. He's asking about what do you think about social investment and CSR program for biggest company? Perhaps Jensen could elaborate more about the questions. I mean, what do you mean by what do you think? I will invite you to speak perhaps, Jensen, so you can elaborate more about your questions. Are you ready? Okay. Hello, Jensen.
I like your name, Jensen. It's a beautiful name. And everybody else that's joining you, hello, generasi rebahan, or something like that. Yes.
Okay, it seems like a technical problem, yeah, Jensen?
Let me try to answer that, Jensen, because I think it's a great start to a great question. So companies now, for social investment and CSR in particular, there is a three-model approach that I think Indonesia in particular can leverage, and as you work through your connections around social work that you could think about. The very first is the financial obligations companies have to donate their revenue for something beneficial for the society. So if companies are not doing that now, introducing social work as a potential to introduce what could be had, right? There isn't a entire mapping of what benefit that could be happened. Let me give you a quick example. Here in the United States, there's a company called Uber. It's worldwide, we know this. It's located in my city in San Francisco. We partnered with Uber probably about 6 months ago, and through my company, and we said, you know what, there's many people that use Uber, but you haven't developed a strategy to give back to kids that take Uber in your car. So any child that is in part of Uber, you're not giving back to where they're going, what locations that they're going. And so Uber made a concerted effort to start to give money to educational programs that help kids with transportation issues. And we got them here in San Francisco, at least, to begin the process of lowering the income or lowering the prices for kids that take Ubers. Again, these are just some really small things, but this is a potential. The second part to your question is about CSR as its potential to save a company money, which is if companies now don't feel the need to be about something, they will be heavily criticized on a global scale, right? We could think of a company like Nike or Apple that's really having a hard time here in the United States because they don't stand for something all the time. And so there's a potential for you to identify through social work where that investment might be. And then finally, particularly around issues related to not only the economy, but the health of our planet. And again, this is particular on green issues. There's a potential for social work to help in climate change and climate reform. So if you think about a direction that you want, that might be something where you can incorporate social work with more CSR in that. Great question, Jensen. I really appreciate that question.
Thank you. Semoga menjawab ya, Mas Jensen. Okay, we're going to move to another rather abstract and another great questions from Alia Tasabila Jamie. She's asking about, she also an international relation graduate like you. She want to know what motivates you doing what you do now, and what do you think the world needs the most right now?
Oh, geez, great question, Alia. I want to give you a big hug for asking that question. So let me give you a big hug on that stuff. It's a beautiful question. One thing the world needs right now is a sense of compassion, being able to listen more to what the needs are of people, of companies, of demands. The pandemic is obviously very crazy. COVID-19 is a crazy time for our country, but specifically what we are going to be looking at in the upcoming years and what motivates me is the need to drive language and messaging in a way that helps people overcome challenges. So one really good thing for you, Elliot, would be in your studies with international relation, consider thinking about communication skills, about how you want to message something very good for companies, for organizations, for governments. There's a lot of need for that right now at this particular point. And part of, you can do that through doing corporate public relations is a wonderful field that is raising up internationally. And also if you go to NGOs, and I can put some resources on the chat, but if you go to NGOs and you volunteer your time or apply to get paid to provide messaging, positive and compassionate messaging around their public relations, it's a wonderful, wonderful field to get into at the moment. So great question and good for you. And if I can be of any support to you in your studies, please let me know. I'm happy to be of your support.
Right. Oke. Begitu ya Mbak Alia, mudah-mudahan bisa menjawab pertanyaannya. Okay, now we found someone who is already interested in working as a social worker in the US. Jamie, is there any website that we can visit, or perhaps what sort of competencies that is required to be a social worker in the US?
I'm going to add it on the chat for everyone, just so you know. This is a wonderful site if you are interested. It's called idealist.org. Look into that, and if you find something that you like in California, please get in touch with me and my email address. That goes for everybody here because you are all amazing. I've added my email address. I will help you in a much more direct way in terms of how to navigate that. Wonderful site just to look for jobs and opportunities that you have that. And then this next one, this is a government site. It's called USAID. If you are interested in doing social work on an international level, there's a lot of companies or NGOs in the United States that want to do work in Southeast Asia. So you can always reach out to them and say, I'd like to be your liaison or your counterpart. And there's wonderful ways to do that internally through the United States. So great question, and please look out for me, and if I can offer any support or services around that, I'm happy to be of support. So
okay, yeah. In Indonesia, keep it coming, guys. If you have, there is one attendee would like to ask. I will open the mic for tadi siapa? Tri. Okay, I will invite Tri to talk.
Hello, Jamie.
hi, Tri. Hi.
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to apologize. I kind of missed some of your speech at first, but I have a question though. Well, I'm an international relations graduate, just like you, and years ago when I tried to apply to some NGOs, they required some educational competency such as master degree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in your opinion, what do you think about the educational competency that needed to be a social worker? Because I have a lot of acquaintance that are really passionate about being social worker, but they are being hindered by the educational background requirements. So do you have any specific explanations, or maybe your opinion, or maybe you have tips for them that are really passionate to become one, but they don't have a specific educational background and things? Thank you, Jamie.
Great, Tri. I appreciate your question. Wonderful question. And one day when I see you, I'm going to give you a high five for continuing your piece. The first part of that question that I want to touch on is educational attainment or competencies. And a way to avoid that, or a way to go around that, is by being the authority or continuing to write or continuing to separate yourself. You know, I talked about finding your voice. So one of the recommendations that I might provide you is start a blog, or start a talk experience, start a YouTube channel with just talking about the parts of the industry that you're interested in doing. So for example, I'm always in front of people talking about how students should behave online, and that's what makes me an authority in this space. And so one of the things that you can demonstrate when you apply to these positions is to say, I might not have a master's in international relations or global studies, but this is the way I built my presence in online spaces. We are seeing in the United States that that is taking more credibility when it's done right, than maybe always obtaining an additional degree. And then the second thing that I'd recommend is to provide there's a lot of certificate programs that are less expensive, almost a fraction of the cost. So consider adding certificate programs on that. And I can give you a quick one here. Noriha. And this is my little 6-year-old. This is what it is. Say salam alaikum. See?
Hi.
Salam alaikum.
Hello.
So Stanford.edu is a wonderful piece where you can consider getting a high level of education, but look at their certificate programs that can be much cheaper and that you can consider applying for. So those are two good ways. Great question, though, 3.
Thank you, Jamie. It really means a lot.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next questions. This is from Nanda Ideal Senja. Beautiful name. She has been working as a social worker previously in Indonesia, and asking about what can we do to introduce this profession to Indonesian society, because at the moment it's not very popular yet and it's not very familiar yet. Perhaps Jamie can share the experience from what you have in the United States that can be applied to Indonesian context.
Nanda, I love what you do, first of all. So Henry, somebody put me in touch so I can give financially to you and the organization that you work with. I think very, very powerful what you do. So please get in touch with me so we can donate to you, to donate to the kids that you work with. It means a lot from the heart. One of the things that I would encourage is you have to be able to tell the story, right? Very short, very, very short, less than 30 seconds. And one of the things that I would recommend is that you tell your story on social media. You tell the story of the kids, not struggling, but the families and the communities surviving and being resilient and being powerful, right? Because what I see now in social work that is a bad sign is a lot of NGOs, a lot of organizations will say, please donate to us because this is what's bad that's happening. And what I find is that if you tell the different story, the positive stories, and continue to share that in really small bites, you don't want anything long. You don't want long videos. You just want, maybe in your case, you want to tell the story of how one of your families was able to overcome. And then you get it to the right channels. Again, you can give it to my channel and create funds around that. It raises awareness both internationally as well as that. The second is to be able in Indonesia, I'm assuming here, to be able to tell not the social work story, but the story of what happens to survivors in your case, or what happens in your work in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So you want to tell the long story of what's sustainable, right? So those are sort of 2 ways I would say. Your social work constitute just being passed away last year. So I think to introduce it as a profession is you can introduce the profession. You have to introduce the impact the profession makes on people's lives. But please get in touch with me because I want to support both personally and get your message out there. Look at maybe some assets that you have, your marketing, what that looks like. We'd be happy to help you out. Great. I love what you do. Thank you. Keep it up.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good insight. So introducing about the impact, not the professions. That's very practical to do. I hope it's answer Mbak Nanda, ya. Semoga sudah
And one last thing for Nanda, I'm going to add it onto the chat, which is there is a very good, if you want to be very good at telling this, and again, this is in English, I'm terribly sorry, but this is a wonderful organization of a woman who works with families that don't know how to feel like that are domestically abused, or that, so she provides words for families. And so take a look at that. She makes very short videos that are 1 minute long. She was valued, I think, somewhere at like $3 million last year. So just think about that. It's a wonderful way. She went from nothing to providing small videos. This is a great way of creating that exposure.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Fatima Zahro. I think some of the questions is asking about the information, where to get information about applying to become a social worker. I think Jamie already answered few of it. Maybe Mbak Fatima bisa scroll up. There is idealist.org USA. Kalau mau berkarir di Indonesia bisa cek di DevJobs Indo. Di situ juga banyak informasi tentang pekerjaan social worker, development worker, seperti itu. Kemudian bisa juga akses di website Kementerian Sosial. Di situ juga banyak vacancy of being a social worker. But mostly kalau di Kementerian Sosial itu lebih kepada ini ya, pekerjaan di rumah sakit, panti, seperti itu. Kalau di Job Dev Indo, saya akan tulis di sini ya, Dev Job Indo itu lebih ke community workers, jadi lebih luas begitu. Kalau yang ini mungkin
that's what I would say as well. That would be a beautiful thing. I also, Fatima, one last one. This is if you have not already done that internationally, this is probably the most easy to get into from afar. The UN jobs, if you haven't seen that, great, always great opportunities coming out of the UN on that piece. So.
Good luck, Fatima. She's still a student, but already planning for her career, so well done. Okay, now...
Last thing, Fatima, I'm sorry to interrupt. One thing that you need is a good mentor. So as you start to apply, either get in touch with me or someone that can actually direct you to what you're trying to become in the social work field. So if you want to get into health, you want to kind of formulate your identity and your position around health. So just be able to just not apply for jobs, but talk to me, talk to others about how specifically you want to get into the type of work. It helps if you can hone in on the work that you're trying to do. Great question though.
Okay. Next one from Muti. James. Muti is asking about the role of social worker in the pandemic condition, especially in raising the economic condition in our country. What are the practical moves that we can do as a beginner social worker? It's so cool.
Silagon, that's in like the Banten region or something of Indonesia. Beautiful. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Beautiful area where you live. The pandemic, you know, I'm going to put my hands up because I don't know if we're going to be here or what it is, right? They say in Indonesia, inshallah, right? Something like you got to make sure that we always leave our faith into something. And again, if we're not Muslim, then we always want to leave it to something else because we don't know, right? It's a crazy experience. Right now, what I see opportunities, particularly in social work, specifically in with economies that are dipping, is to see where the small successes are, right? You want to build your network, and what the small act that you can do to raise your economy is about always performing those the small acts that increases the economy. So let me give you a quick example, right? So you may consider that tomorrow you want to be selling art pieces, and that's your job, that I just want to sell art. But the social work component of that is, what type of art is it? How much money are you going to give back into the economy once you have that? How much would you like to donate for families that don't have something. This starts to create an economy of change that we call here in the United States, that you give a little bit, you take a little bit, and then you give a little bit around your network, your people around you. And that starts to kind of create, these small acts start to create change. We see it here. We've been witness here in San Francisco, where I live, to a lot of people without homes, that many have lost their jobs. And what we are seeing now is we provide economies where we've now asked companies to start just pitching a little bit to some of these skills. And most of them say, because my profits are in, but you can consider making some of those changes if you do that. So as a social worker for beginner, the very smallest thing that you can do is provide one small act of change in everything that you do. It's a wonderful question, and it's difficult during this time, but it's possible. So consider doing that.
Okay.
These are great questions, you guys. I love you guys. This is wonderful. You're a hard audience. I love you guys. This is very difficult.
Very active, lots of questions. I'm afraid our time probably wouldn't enough to answer all of this. Okay, so creativity and sensibility in reading the context is the answer for Muti, yeah, as a beginner social worker. Right, next one, G, is from Umarotun Niswah. I think she's in Purwakarta, West Java. She's asking about the mental health sides of a social worker, how to take care of it while you are helping others. What about helping yourself first?
I love, oh, what a beautiful, beautiful name, beautiful presence, and great question. The truth is, it's very difficult, right? It's difficult to always give and give and give and give without actually feeling that you're making a change. But the question that we want to ask ourselves is, what do you protect yourself from, right? When I go out there, I'm not giving everything. I'm just giving what impact that I want to see. So what I would say is, social work can be draining if we allow the conditions that we are working in to drain us. It's difficult to see people that have cancer, or that children that don't have a mother that are trying to study. As a teacher, as a person in my field, it's difficult to see violence in my communities every day. But what I come home with is not the challenges associated with that. I come with the small wins that I had. I was able to do this, and I was able to collect it. So one of the things that I would recommend is, every single day you do two things. You say, what are you grateful for today? And the second thing you want to do is, what change and what impact did you make on one person today? That, for 20 plus years now, has sustained me, and I never feel drained because I always answer those two questions. So, and I'm pretty honest. I like to smile a lot because it makes me feel good. So how do you manage it as well? As you have to also have an outlet, meaning you have to maybe physically exercise, maybe write, maybe smile more, maybe take photos, but you always have to have something where you're just not always working in the field. You always have to have something separate that is about you. So consider that in your process. Great question.
Okay. Oke, jadi bagaimana menemukan regulasi terbaik untuk dirimu gitu ya, untuk mengatasi stres itu ya, Uma, gitu. Kamu harus mengenali dirimu juga, apa cara terbaik untuk mengatasi perasaan drained while working as a social worker. Thank you, Uma and Jay. It's gonna be the last question, Jay. I'm sorry, guys. It's from Mila Amalia Gautama. Yep. She has a different education background from career that she intended to apply. She has international relations, but how is it related to technical engineering? Okay, so what can she do when you have a different education background if you want to work in a social worker?
As a social worker, if you have an engineer degree in your case, or if it's something more technical, one of the biggest impacts that you can make is to reach out to an organization and to provide your services, not for payment initially. We want to kind of be very clear that we want to help to volunteer first, just for a little bit, right? And so how you can then transition is to offer your technical services in gaps that you might have. Let me give you a very quick example of what that looks like. Many organizations struggle with not having a plan, a sustainable plan for long periods of time. So if you're an engineer, for example, if you have a background in engineering, we want to see how much you might actually be able to structure, depending on the type of engineering degree you have, how you want to structure the organization. If it's specifically mechanical engineering, you can consider working with organizations that are helping to support social services in the city, for example, rebuilding something in the city. So what I would say is take your background and leverage opportunities for those in those fields. Now, let's say there's not, you want to get into medical things. What I would say to you is start by volunteering a little bit of your time, maybe a hospital, maybe a school, maybe a center, and then start to build your skill sets by talking about and writing about and helping to promote that way. This is a really good start if you wanted to kind of develop some of those skill sets. It's so one of two ways. It's not impossible. I think it's just a little different route to get there.
Okay.
Great question though, Mila. Thank you.
So additional answer for Mila. Don't you worry, because we have experience in Gagas. We have a really good a trainer, also a project manager, and you know what? He's from mechanical engineering atau teknik mesin gitu ya. So in Gagas, we have so many different education people from different education background that is work in a development area, but it's only based on one thing, the belief of the cause. So they really believe in the cause that they're working on, and the rest was just fell through, you know, like your experience, your organization experience will be very beneficial. And as a company or as an NGO, I think that's what they actually look at when they're screening for a job. They will be looking at your experience, not only your education background. So don't you worry, Mila, if you have a courage to work as a social worker, do it. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Jamie, we have to ask you probably perhaps if we extend the session for like 10 minutes more, do you still have time to do it?
Of course, yes. Of course,
Okay.
of course. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so guys, we have additional time for you if you want to ask more questions, or if you want to open microphone, you can just simply raise hand. We could pick your question to be answered. While waiting, Jamie, I want to read some of the questions in the registration form that already came to us. Okay, I have to check. Okay. Okay. There is a question from Kaisan Rifki. He's asking about how urgent is social workers in the context of village area or remote area. You know, obviously, United States is more like urban, large country, but what about the urgency of social worker in the more remote area? Jamie maybe can answer that.
Great question. It's a wonderful question. You know, when we were, and again, this is a small part, when we were in Lombok, one of the things that I noticed is the community and the culture, how tight knit and how close it is, the people, the connections that they have with one another and their company. And we were there during Ramadan, and it just surprised me how beautiful the presence was of people working together. So one of the opportunities that I would find is I would leverage those opportunities. And this is an example that I would give that I would likely invest in. I would put my own money in, but also as an opportunity. Here's what I would do. I would begin the process of capturing those stories for families. So again, this is not getting at the social work need, but we want to first capture and validate those stories that families have. I would take my camera or something very small like a phone, and I would say, can I interview you? And I want you to tell me about the strengths that you have as a family in this community. Maybe some people would say, no, 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 no. But then I would then capture those videos, and I would try to promote through that community what the needs are. Part of social work is not going in and fixing problems, but helping people to identify where their own strengths are. So by doing that, by doing a quick interviews, by posting those, then by supporting them if they need that, you start to develop what we refer to as this needs assessment. And in particular, remote areas that don't have a lot of voice, that don't, that work on very basic sustenance, one of the easiest ways to get started in these areas is to validate the experiences and the struggles people have, right? Then what you can do is once people start to identify, you know, we need more shoes, or this is, we need a stronger economy, we need to trade more, then you can start to develop small opportunities, business opportunities, where you can involve businesses and social work to combine together, right? And I can give you another really quick example if you allow me. There's a company called Patagonia. They work in the United States, but they work in parts of the South Pacific, in Tonga, and they also work in Chile. And what they found is many plastic in remote areas. There was many plastic bags that were being brought in the shore. And so what they did is they talked to the local people, they realized that it was a problem, and they started to collect bags. And then they worked with the companies that were dropping those bags off, or different packages. And they said, what if we made hats for you, or t-shirts for the experience? Can you potentially give us a discount on this? And now what you see is a company like Patagonia is so popular in the United States because they've decided to do something very simple, like naming and seeing the needs of some of these communities. So anything that you can leverage, any stories that you can gather is really beneficial to help to voice the concerns with those local communities. But again, it's very difficult. Remote areas are very difficult to assess. But finding and identifying the right need before you go into social work, and identifying what those things are, and then presenting it both to NGOs or local businesses, it's a great bridge. It's a great start for your work in the social work. So.
Okay, so it seems like social worker for people in remote area is kind of bridge, right? The bridge to magnify the voice of the marginalized people in there to the wider world, so people can know about their stories. People can do something to improve the people there in the remote areas. I think that's
absolutely, yeah. Because our problem in the United States is we attempt to help, and there's a lot of resources in the United States, but the resources we know firsthand don't always get to the right people. So we need social workers, folks like yourself on this call that are interested in the field. We need you to be the bridge, because if you can't speak on behalf of folks in remote areas, then you rely on NGOs to help to make the impact. And that's never a really good idea, because while we can provide the resources, we're not always going to provide the best impact. So we got to be able to say what is good and what is not so good. So
yeah. Oh wow, very interesting. I put the link of the story of Patagonia on the chat, guys, if you want to have a look. Also, James, in Indonesia, actually the profession of social worker has only been legalized last year, actually 2019, and people, you can have a look at the link I will put on the chat, so you can read the regulations from our government. You can have a look there. You can download the undang-undang and also the guideline of the undang-undang, so you can have a read and have a deep, more understanding about the social worker in Indonesia, perhaps. All right, so is another personal question here. One personal question from Anifa Tamara. She has interest in working as a social worker in the United States, but already have a family with 1 children. So what is the opportunity of, or the chance of bringing the family to the United States and working as a social worker?
Let me give you some political context. Congratulations on having a family. That's beautiful. So I don't talk politics too often, but the last 4 years has been very difficult for immigration here in the United States. We had a presidential, we had an administration here that it was very difficult to enter the United States and to come in the United States. We were starting to see with the new administration coming in, softening of that, and that's yet to be had with the pandemic. So one of the things that I would recommend if you are interested in both coming to the United States and also considering a job in social work is first be very specific about what field you want to get into. If you want social work to be part of like nursing, medical, education around medicine, public health, there's a huge demand for that. So if you are interested in that type of social work, if you have an interest in mental health, you know, helping to support kids, families, adults in that, there's a huge need and a demand for that. Education, if you have a specific education, there's a lot of folks coming from different parts of Southeast Asia, the Philippines in particular, that's so a lot of be very specific when you apply. And then the second specifically around visa is being able to name your sponsor of who you're going to come visit or an organization you visit. So I'm happy to help you out with that. It's usually helpful when you can get someone, it's helpful. I'm terribly sorry, everybody. My daughter wants to say goodnight to me. Yes. Okay. Buenas noches. Good night. Beso, por favor.
Sorry for stealing your dad.
Buenas noches. Okay. Okay.
No, you said it on screen.
Oh, she said she likes everybody's picture here. She said she likes everybody's name, and I said it on screen. So thank you.
So this is the real struggle of being a social worker, working, taking care of family, right, Jamie?
That's it. Yeah. Just so back to that question, it's just making sure that you have a sponsor. So please get in touch with me and I can help you if you are very serious about that. Usually a good company or an organization or a family will help to come sponsor that. And if you do it through our organization or something, I can help you out with that, or at least provide you the resources. So. And if you need me to take care of your house and you want to stay in my house and I'll stay at your house, I know Henry's always invited me, but I'm always open to going to Indonesia to take care of anybody's house, particularly if it's around the beach.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah. All right. Next questions came from Solo, Central Java. Roslani Eka. Hello, Roslani. She's asking very important questions about the collaborations between the NGOs and social workers to create a greater social impact. What did you think of it, Jay?
Great synergy. The biggest, so yeah, wonderful synergy. I love it. I love the idea of that. NGOs having a better messaging and marketing plan is a wonderful example. Highly encourage that to continue to happen. You know, how do you talk about impact in a way that gets others to donate, but more importantly, to get social workers to be at the forefront of that is very, very, it's a great opportunity for that particular connection. And social work in general, being able to know what your value is very good. Particular NGOs sometimes will come in and not provide value to the person. So you might say, Kaya, I want you to do some social work in this field. So it's good to push back on NGOs and say, you know, this is where my strengths are, and this is where I need to be leveraged better. So if you're very good at social media, for example, huge opportunity to do social work and social media, particularly around the United States and NGOs that are going into different countries. How do you begin to use messaging in that way? If you're going into medicine, thinking about social work as it comes to public health and communicating what the right steps for medicine might be. So it's, for me, I think the synergy is great. It's just being very clear about what you want the steps to be to voice your identity in those spaces. So.
All right.
Great question.
Lots of things to think about. You have to think about being creative in your project, sensitive to the cultural context, and also play with the social media to make a greater impact for the society. Wow. So many different sets of skills that you need there to be a social worker. All right, guys, thank you very much for your all questions. Unfortunately, we cannot answer all of them. Although if you still have some questions, please do drop an email to Jamie, right, Jamie? You already
Of course.
put emails there, so we can answer follow-up questions that perhaps you want to answer to us, to Jamie. Okay, we came to an end. So last not least, see, there's my juggling. I have my own juggling. Okay, so probably a closing statement from you, Jamie.
Yeah, you got it. So thank you all for joining this evening. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me personally if I could be of a support. You have a wonderful, wonderful leader in your organization if you need that support. Here's where I would close this evening with first an opportunity. For many, many years, we have thought about how to develop a support system from the United States to Indonesia. I have a lifelong love for Indonesia. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Love the different islands. So if you ever think about an idea about, you know, I want to really get into social work, but maybe I don't have the financial backing to help me out, or maybe I just need some support, or maybe I need some contacts, reach out to me, because we're actively trying to find something where we can potentially give, you know, the organization here is a great start. But if there's something very specific, you know, you might say, in my home village, I need somebody to help to support, and this is the idea that I have. Reach out to us, because we're very much interested, and we have a big network here in the United States that would be interested in doing the direct help to get your voice and to get your identity out there. And then I can sort of help to promote that, what that process would look like. So many ideas that I've had in the past. For example, I've wanted to create a movie theater for all the different places in Indonesia where people can come together and celebrate their own filmmaking and their own ways in which they identify themselves. Plenty of unique ideas on that. So that's an ask for you all. That's, if you are very interested, I help you out with that, and I'm happy to embrace that. The second is really taking away what we learned today. Number one is making sure that you have a voice. So if you're an engineer joining us today or love social work, identify your voice and share that, right? So Kaya, hopefully your little daughter, you're going to say, this is where my voice is at. The second takeaway that I'm going to ask you all to think about tonight is to share what change you want to see in Indonesia over the next year. What do you want to see that's different than what is today? Again, we are faced with this pandemic, COVID-19, but things will look different next year. So what changes do you want to make? And voice those changes out, not only to your country, to your government, but locally. How do you want to see those changes take place, right? So voice them, be able to do that on social media, on post, sharing them, talking locally. And then finally, ask yourself, how do you want to celebrate what you've already done in social work? So if you've already done some very good things in the area, maybe you've educated yourself, you've gotten the competencies, maybe you applied to an NGO and you got an experience. I want you to celebrate that, meaning I want you to continue to say that. Name it, post it, make sure that you continue to reference it when you connect on it. And wherever you go, if it's on corporate social responsibility through businesses, or if it's looking at NGO work or coming to the United States or doing local work in remote areas, always find be able to identify where your greatest impact is through just one sentence. Just one sentence. And I'm going to close you off with this. In my house, in my family, in my life, my one sentence for impact as a social worker is this. Every day I wake up, obviously I thank God, but I wake up with the need to help someone learn better. That's my sentence. And that's why for 20 years I became a teacher, I ran a center, I work with governments, and I've done that because that's my one sentence of my impact. I want you to think the same thing tonight, okay? I know you all have it. Email it to me, put it on the chat, but share it with me so we can all celebrate this moment together. And with that, that's it.
Oh.
I wish you a beautiful life.
We appreciate such a motivating and moving closing statement. So guys, please disambut ya call for collaboration-nya tadi dari J. Kemudian dipraktekkan, dicari satu kalimat yang membuat dirimu bergerak setiap hari dan merasa senang bekerja menjadi social worker. Ya, begitu. Oke, teman-teman, we have a feedback form to improve our class in the future. So please, you can access that feedback form and please have. It's only like 2 minutes filling up the form that already been on chat, so you can go and click and fill. It's very beneficial for us. It will be very useful for us. So please do spend some time to fill it out. Jamie, thank you so much for today. It has been such a great session.
You're amazing, Kaya. Thank you. And Henry and Rati and the rest of the group here at Garasi, and I appreciate you all. Best of luck. Hopefully this isn't the last time you see me.
I hope so.
The next time I'm doing jalan-jalan in Indonesia, and then when I'm walking around Indonesia, and if you see me in your face, come say hello, okay? Hopefully one day, huh?
Thank you. We're looking forward for our future collaboration, Jay. Thank you so much and have a good
I look
evening.
forward to it. Okay, have a beautiful evening, okay? Good night, everyone.
Good night. Oke, sahabat Gagas Talenta Academy, demikian sesi dari kita sudah selesai. Seperti kata Jamie tadi ya teman-teman, jadilah be the change you want to see. Seperti kata Mahatma Gandhi juga, semoga teman-teman selalu bersemangat untuk menemukan alasannya dan menemukan kekuatannya untuk terus berkiprah di bidang ini dan menciptakan dampak yang lebih luas. Salam dari kami, saya Bulan, mohon pamit. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, selamat siang semuanya.